Okay, today we are going to work on filling my globe, which this is just half of it. I'm going to use this epoxy that I have and make the sand for the globe. I'm not sure how much I need, so we'll find that out. So I just poured about half of what was in there. And from my first attempt at making sand, I saw that I mixed it pretty thin and the sand was see-through. Well, since I want to make this globe kind of like a, I don't think I want the sand to be see-through, is basically what I'm trying to say. So I'm going to make the sand thicker. And I'm using a disposable cup this time because I can clean my little cups with the epoxy, but with sand it pretty much makes it impossible. So I'm not using the stir sticks that I have reused, and I'm not using a cup that I'm going to reuse because the sand is just going to get everywhere. Because this is real beach sand and it comes out really dark, what I wanted to do to kind of make it look prettier was I was going to add some of this gold glitter to it and stir that in. I know glitter sinks, but I'm hoping that with the sand, and because I'm making it thick, the glitter will actually mix in with the sand and you'll just see pieces of it here and there and just make it shine a little bit. So I've washed and just let my mold dry to make sure it's clean. And I'm going to scoop this sand in. Now I've never used this mold before, it just arrived today. So I'm not sure how it's going to work. I'm not sure how it's going to come out of the mold. But we're going to try it. And then I'm going to let it dry for at least an hour to make it so it gets sticky, because I don't want everything to settle when I put it in, like the starfish and the shells. I don't want them to sink into the sand. So I'm going to let this set so it gets thicker so that won't happen. And then I will be back in an hour or so to show you the next part. Okay, we're back. It's been almost 2 hours, and we're gonna see if we can stick some of these starfish in here along the edges and see if they'll stand up. Which looks like they will stand up. And then we're gonna put shells in there to help the starfish stand up. I'm hoping I can layer these, maybe that'll make a really neat little look inside of this thing. And this one's pretty tall, so I need to make sure that this lid will fit in there too. So basically I'm going to fill this thing in with all these different shapes, and then I'm going to make sure that this lid goes on and can close so that when I fill it all the way up, we actually can still have a good seal. So I'm going to work on this, and then I'm going to add some epoxy to it in a little bit after I figure out where all this stuff is going to go. So I'll let you know. Okay, I've filled it up with all sorts of shells and everything, and hopefully it'll look good when it comes out. I've made some epoxy, and I am going to color it now because I want it to be blue. So I have a little bit of my paint, and I'm just going to take a toothpick and start with a little bit because I don't want it too blue. I can always add more. And that's definitely dark enough blue for me. And I'm going to let this sit 5 minutes to get the bubbles out, and then I'll be back and we'll pour it in. it's been about 5 minutes. So we're going to just pour this epoxy gently in here and hope that everything stays on the bottom where it's supposed to. I was actually hoping that would fill that up more because there's quite a bit of epoxy, and I have quite a bit of epoxy more to go, which means this might use up a lot more epoxy. So, but we will see, and I'm going to let this sit for a couple of hours to let it settle and stiffen before I add another layer of epoxy. Okay, here we are back again, filling up the next part of our mold. It's set. It's actually been a couple of days, so we're gonna find out how well it mixes, because I didn't come back when I thought I was going to because of work. So we're going to fill this up and see how high this amount of epoxy goes, which is as high as we can go without putting the dome on. So it's finally time to put the dome on. But also means I have to make more epoxy. Again. Okay, we're hopefully back for our final fill. And I'm going to start putting in this epoxy that I've already colored blue and waited the 5 minutes. And we'll just fill it all the rest of the way. This globe has taken me all week. The hole that this mold came with was too small, and I tried for an hour the first day just trying to get my epoxy through that hole. I was using a toothpick and pushing the epoxy through, and then I thought maybe my epoxy got too thick, so I made a whole new batch of epoxy and tried to pour that through the hole, and then that still wasn't working. So then I eventually just took my X-Acto knife and cut a little bit bigger of a hole. And I don't know what that's going to do to the inside of the mold, so I don't know if I messed it up or not. So let's find out how we did. I'm hoping my mold doesn't break even. I'm hoping it didn't crack. So many different things. Well, the first part came off. Definitely a lot of bubbles, but it still is pretty smooth. I have the lip where this hole was that I'm going to have to sand off, but it's still pretty small, so I think it'll be doable. So if we just get the second off and see how much of a lip there is right there to try and figure out. So there we go. Because it's a two-piece mold, I guess it does leave a lip right there. I was really hoping that it wouldn't, but it did, so I'm going to have to sand that down. But the sand turned out really neat. You can see the shells and the starfish. The bubbles, they don't look too bad. So thank you for waiting an entire week to see how this turned out, and we'll have to try this again and see what we can learn from it. Take care.